Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout. Today we have a guest from Arizona, ex-police officer who has wrote a book about a lot of the stuff we'll talk about today. So I'm sure he'll tell us all about that book. But as I always do, I want you to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on these in case the algorithm or whatever happens and you don't see it come up. Also, share this episode out if you find just one thing useful in it. This episode is sponsored by my company, Create From Why. And at the moment, we are running a motorcycle retreat for police officers, first responders, and business professionals if they want to come so we can network, but all to help teach you the tools that I learned through my motorcycle trip when I was refining myself and that I've learned since and have helped hundreds of future and current police officers and really knowing who they are so that they don't burn out or get nailed by PTSD like myself and so many of my guests have had happen. But without further ado, we have Randall Snyder here with us, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his experience with burnout, PTSD, and his exceptional law enforcement career. Randall, why don't you take it away? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me come on your show because you're doing such a great job for so many people, and I just hope that we can continue and somebody can take something from this. A little bit about myself. I wanted to be a cop all my life. I like to joke that it started with the first donut, but really it was, just one of those things that I knew from a very young age I wanted to do. So finally, in 2000, I got hired by the Pinal County Sheriff's Office out here in Arizona. Pinal County at the time was a very rural county. We cover everything between Phoenix and Tucson, but our county is roughly the size of Connecticut. And so the beats that we worked oftentimes were like 700 square miles, 800 square miles. And oftentimes backup is like 40 minutes or an hour out, even running hot. And so it was really a different kind of policing environment. When I was testing, I was riding along with a lot of city agencies that, maybe run two-man cars or the nearest backup's a mile away, something like that. And going out to the county, it was the Old West. Lots of farmland. I used to have to, rustle cattle back into the farm areas, stuff like that. And we still had our calls, we had our fights, we had our domestics and things like that. But it was transitioning to a more suburban kind of area. And over the years, our population has gone from about 170,000 to we're a little over 500,000 right now. We were at one point the second fastest growing county in the country.
Wow.
So did patrol for about 5 years, loved it, but got to the point where I was bored. I could tell I was starting to burn out on patrol stuff because I wasn't getting that thrill going to calls. I didn't feel that adrenaline when I was going to the things. And I thought, man, this is where complacency sets in. This is where you have a problem. And so I tested for corporal, decided, maybe if I bossed people around a little bit, that would help, get the thrill back. And it was good because I moved to other areas of the county. I got to see other parts and experience other demographics. The area that I was in primarily was suburban. It was closer to the Phoenix Metro Valley, so we had a lot of the same issues as a city. When I promoted, I went to the mountain region, and our mountain region is a lot of copper mines and things like that. A lot of the mines have closed though, and so the population is in a bit of a transition. But it's all everybody's related to everybody. Everybody knows everybody. And so going into that was a whole new world. It kind of opened up my eyes to stuff. And then I was there for about a year. Then I went over to our Casa Grande region, which is down on the western edge. And that area has I-10 that bisects it. And then it also has I-8 that goes out to San Diego. And so being less than 100 miles from the Mexican border, there was a lot of smuggling, a lot of dope, a lot of human smuggling, and then also a lot of the gang influence from California moving in. So getting to see all the different ways that the county worked and the different people was good for a while. I got my general instructor certification, so I started teaching at the academy, and that was good to be able to take what I'd learned and give it back to the new generation of cops. And I knew that before I promoted to sergeant that I would want investigative experience. And so in 2010, I tested for investigations and I went into our persons crimes unit. And persons crimes basically does everything that a person can do to another person except homicide. We have a homicide squad that's what they deal with. They deal with some of the armed robberies, but otherwise we did everything. And the majority of our work was either physical child abuse, sexual child abuse, and then after that it was like the felony domestic violence. It was all day, every day of people doing the worst things they can to each other, and oftentimes to the people they say they love. So that was an interesting initiation into investigations. I did that for a couple of years, and I had a couple of cases that revolved around computer crimes, internet crimes against children, and a little bit of the sex trafficking that was starting to kind of pick up. And my captain saw that I was kind of building an interest to it, and he said, go check out this internet crimes against children thing, see what the qualifications would be, what you would need to be able to do that sort of thing, write it up, and we're going to create a testing for it, and we're going to test for that promotion and make sure to put yourself in. So, of course, asking my opinion, the perfect ICAC officer is a 6-foot white male with a college degree and blonde hair and blue eyes. And so, surprisingly, I got the position. Don't ask me how. And I was sent to Phoenix, where the state ICAC task force is housed. Phoenix PD kind of heads it, but it's based out of the FBI building. And I was initially going to go up there for a month's worth of training. And when I got there, it was like drinking from a fire hose, but it was high speed, low drag, lots of fun, lots of warrants, doing it all day. And the commander said, "Hey, you want to come up here full time?" I was like, "Yeah." So I called my captain. I said, "Hey, they want me to come up here full time. Can I come over as a TFO, a task force officer?" And he said, "Yeah, go for it." And I spent 2 years up there.
Wow.
Did some wonderful work, had a lot of fun, did some amazing cases. And then in 2016, I rotated back to my agency and continued working internet crimes there until I retired in early 2021. But the one thing I'll say about being on that task force, yeah, it was high speed, low drag, but again, we were doing warrants 2-3 a week within the team, and there was 8 of us on the team. So that averaged out to, I was doing at least 1 warrant a month, sometimes more. And once we do the warrants, of course, we get the forensics back, and now we have to review it all. And we were having cases where guys had 100, 200, 500,000 images and videos of sexual exploitation material that we have to manually review. We have to look at each one of those images, determine whether it's chargeable, and classify it so that we can have an accurate count of what's chargeable images, what's not chargeable images, what's adult, what's child. And at the time, my girls were young. They're still young, but they were little bitty. And going to work all day and seeing children get sexually abused and exploited, and then coming home to my own kids, it messed me up a little bit. I had days where I would come home and I couldn't look at my girls and I couldn't interact with my girls because I'd seen an image earlier that day that kind of vaguely sort of looked like them or reminded me of them. And it's hard to shut that off. It's hard to take your brain and switch it over. So in 20, I guess it was 2019, I started recognizing that as much as I was enjoying doing the job and catching the bad guys and saving kids, I had spent at that point about 5 years doing internet crimes. Part of the time I was doing reactive cases where we were getting cases from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children or from patrol or whatever, and we were working them reactively. But the lion's share of what I did for most of my time was proactive. I spent 6 years as a 14-year-old girl, and to look at me, I I got a face made for radio, but boy, I was a hot 14-year-old girl for quite a while there. Um, and my sheriff likes to say that I was the best 14-year-old girl in the county, and he leads with that without any context. And I get some really weird looks, and then we explain it, and people go, "Oh, okay, to catch a
I know
predator."
exactly what you're talking about, but viewers of that might not.
um, but the initial reaction people get is always fun, and I loved doing it. But I got to the point where if I had to talk to one more pervert that wanted to show me his junk and try and chat me up, I was ready to go. I was ready to go postal on somebody, and so I recognized it was time to retire. It was time to get out. I was eligible for retirement at the end of 2020, and I spent most of 2020 just trying to clean things up, get things done, and retire. And fortunately, I was able to retire at the beginning of 2021. I failed at retirement. I got hired back with the sheriff's office in May of 2022, but doing background investigations instead of child crimes, so that I'm only talking to good people now.
At least you hope they're good people.
Well,
that background
they're
check.
they're testing for a job with us. So I mean, if they got anything too bad,
They're not very smart for putting a background check through.
exactly. I have to ask them, have you ever committed these kinds of crimes? And I get to the one about murder, homicide, attempted murder, manslaughter, and I'm waiting for that one yes answer because it's going to come up sometime. But so far, everybody looks at me like, why would I test here if I was been charged with homicide?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
we kind
It's
of
like
gotta
it's like when I've gone for some jobs before and I've had to do background checks and that, and I go ex-cop. They're like, "Oh, so you'll pass it easy." I was like, "I hope so." I
You would
hope
hope,
so.
but
Yeah, I hope so. I
yeah,
hope so. I looked after the heads of state, for New Zealand and overseas diplomats. So I hope so. I haven't done anything since, but I hope so.
yeah. But it's funny. We get the people, especially now with the younger generation, and as prevalent as some of the dope use is, especially since it's been legalized in some of the states, and some of the questionable questionable behaviors that have become slightly more socially popular.
Yeah.
And we're getting some answers from people, and like, so have you used any drugs? Oh yeah. It's like, oh, well, all
Yeah.
right, then tell me about it. And they're like, how long do you have? Oh, well, okay. Don't call us. We'll call you. Thanks. And have a nice day.
Yeah, yeah. So let's go back. So you've done the crime stuff. I know, like, from my story, and I can only relate to my story. But I was looking after heads of state. I went from looking at, as we call in the industry, they fit the profile of a shithead or a criminal. And any person who says that they don't, that there isn't that profile, is lying. There is a profile.
Right.
There is a thing that that just sticks out to us. We do look for other people, but I went from that to looking at literally everybody as a possible threat. Like, I went from looking at the guy who was wearing the baggy pants and went in summer, and the hoodie in summer with his head hoodie up and sunglasses on, to looking after guys and watching guys in suits, going, okay, is this guy a threat? And I know
Right.
that threw me full on, like, alertness on everything. My wife couldn't leave the house without me giving her some sort of watch your back type thing. Did you find yourself doing that with your kids?
Oh, absolutely. Especially with the online stuff. And, I've said a couple of times, if I could find the plug for the internet, like if I could find where is the computer that houses it all that I could unplug, I would do it in a heartbeat. I would go back to paper dictionaries and having to get a Rand McNally map to find my way around town in a heartbeat. I love my phone. I love the stupid games and the internet, and being able to any idiot
Us
question
be
that
able to
pops into
do
my head
this.
at
Us
2
us
a.m.
be able to do
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
yeah, I love it. But at the same time, I wish I could unplug it, because there's so much potential. And the scariest thing, you talk about the profile. So early on, when we would start working up a profile on our offender and trying to figure out who they were, we always pull a driver's license photo if we can. And I would say 98% of the time, you can look at that driver's license photo and go, oh yeah, yep, he's one of them. They've just got that look on their face, like, I have a white panel van and some free candy, you know,
It's funny. It's funny that we relate to that because that's our era was you don't take free candy. I'm like I'm at a friend's house right now when we're recording this, and he's an ex non-sworn police officer. He used to work in the jails here.
okay.
And so he and I were literally talking about this. He's got a newborn and that, and we're talking about this whole like I want her to be friendly and interact with people, and so I'm glad she's interacting with lots of people, but I don't want her to go to the free candy guy.
Right.
We literally
Well,
were
and
talking
that's
about this about an hour ago.
and that's the scary thing is, 98% of them were the free candy guy, but you got that other 2% that you look at him and you're going, there's no way this guy's a pervert, and those are the ones that make you paranoid of everybody.
Yeah.
I so part of my undercover, I would look at ads people would place on things like Craigslist and Backpage when it was a thing, and try to find these people that were actively seeking out kids. And I ended up arresting an elementary school teacher that had just moved from Texas and just taken a new job at the elementary school about 4 miles from my house. Guy looks like anybody. I mean, he looks like a teacher. He looks like a principal. He looks like a clean cut older guy. No big deal. This guy was soliciting teens to come to his house and go skinny dipping, and was actively trying to communicate with kids. And so I reached out to him because, hey, I'm a 14-year-old girl with no moral compass and an ability to, do whatever, because my mom's a single mother alcoholic that doesn't pay attention to me. And so he latched onto that, and he was ready to engage in sexual acts with what he thought was a 14-year-old girl, and was trying to convince me to go to his house in Scottsdale. And this guy looked just as mayonnaise white bread, clean cut as you could possibly imagine. And it was those cases where it wasn't the scary guy. It wasn't the guy that everybody looks at and go, yeah, stay away from him. He's he's the one that puts the lotion on the skin. And so we those kinds of cases are what really kind of, I think, threw me over the edge of not being able to walk through the mall and go, okay, stay away from that one, stay away from that. No, that one's cool, because
You didn't have something to actually teach your kids, because you're like, everybody's possibly is it.
Yeah.
So it becomes that whole thing of everybody's a threat. Stay away from everybody. Let's be hermits.
And my wife and I had a lot of discussions about this because I was so paranoid and I was so
I
freaked out
I
about
bet they were. I know my
everybody.
wife and I had discussions as well.
And she had to remind me pretty regularly that, look, 99% of people are not out there to hurt kids. 99% of people are not out there to commit crimes and be bad people. You just happen to deal with that 1% all day long.
Time.
Yes. And
Yes.
so you think that 99% are out there to hurt people instead of the opposite. And it's really hard to keep that in mind when all you deal with all day are assholes, are creeps
And
that want to do stuff.
and this is what my wife and I always talk about. And she talked about, even when I was in the career and that, and she'd talk about with friends and that, about the fact of he deals with the bottom, we called it the 10% of society all the time. And so you start to think about it. But when you're in that zone, when you're in that area, and I talk about it now with clients and with potential clients and with on here, you become the average of what you hang around with all the time.
Right.
You become the average of the 7 people you spend the most time with. Same thing with your job. You can, if you're not very, very proactive about shifting and changing and switching off and realizing and seeing the good with the bad. So when you were in that role, did you have a way of coping with it?
I tried to find lots of coping mechanisms. Dark humor, obviously one of them. I just, it got darker as things went on. Because one of the things, and I had a picture hanging up on my wall in my office that said to catch the wolf, you have to become the wolf. And a lot of times doing the undercover stuff, you really have to get into the mindset of the people to be able to say the right things, do the right things to catch them. Because sometimes I was playing a kid, sometimes I was the creepy dad or the creepy uncle that was, trying to buddy up to the other perverts to get them to say and do things. and so I had to find ways to actively switch my brain from undercover mode to, okay, time to go home and be dad
Yeah.
and Boy Scout leader and husband and all of those things. And we there was a number of different things that were done to try and help facilitate that. And one of the things was, we have two computers at our desk. We have our undercover computer. That's where we do all of our dirty, nasty everything. And then we have our other computer that is for report writing and stuff like that. And this computer, you don't ever look at this and have family pictures here. You
Oh,
don't ever put anything here that looks like something that would remind you of home. It needs to be way over here because you don't ever want to associate family pictures next to pictures of perverts and stuff. And so having to physically turn your body away from the bad stuff helped kind of
change
transition
that
that at
anchor.
times.
Yeah, change that anchor.
Um, we also didn't look at images the last hour of our shift. If we had to go through and classify images and look at the different images from a suspect's computer and decide if they're chargeable or not, we don't do that in the last hour of the shift. Last hour of the shift was for playing Angry Birds or, something completely unrelated to everything, so that when you got in the car to drive home, all of that nastiness had been kind of set aside and out of the way, and you've got new things on your mind that don't associate with that to help shut that down. And sometimes it's easier than others. I mean, I can only play so many hours of Candy Crush a day before it I feel like I need to do something. And so I could set aside that last hour. And then the biggest thing was like when we watch videos,
Mm,
um, we never watched the video with the sound on. The way the brain imprints memories, if it's audio and visual at the same
mhm.
time, it imprints it much deeper into your brain. And so we would watch the video without the sound, and then we would turn on the sound and not watch the video so that we could get all the evidence that we needed out of it without associating it together. And those were, some of the tricks that we learned to try and help us, but mostly it was, I mean, I hate to say it, but full disclosure, brutal honesty. Uh, my best friends for a while became Jim, Jack, John, Jose. Whatever bottle was closest when I got home to help me fall asleep, because there were times where, even with doing all of these things to keep it out of my head, um, I would have the flashbacks at night. I would have the intrusive memories of the images and videos. I couldn't blink without it being like a photo projector changing
Mm,
images. And the only thing I could do was drink myself to sleep because closing my eyes was scary.
mm,
And it takes a lot to kind of try and shift that and get out of that and do it the right ways. And I knew that alcohol wasn't the right way, but it was what was working at the time,
yeah.
or I thought was.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's and it happens to so many people with it, and it's not just in child crime and that. It's the job in general. You hear about it. I'm honored that I'm thankful with myself that I never went down the bottle way, because alcohol was never a good thing with my family, and fights would always happen after alcohol. And so I never went down that road, luckily. But
Right.
I did other things like ride my motorcycle stupid and not care if I crashed. And so
Yeah.
I'd push that corner a little bit harder and a little bit faster than I knew I should have, just to feel
Right.
something. Sleep wasn't too much of an issue till the very end, and then I don't even remember flashbacks. It just, I couldn't sleep. It just wouldn't happen. Like I close my eyes and just there'd be nothing there. I just
Yeah.
felt nothing. So what would you say, like obviously there's a lot of different coping mechanisms that you learn, obviously from different people, I take it, from that have been in
Mhm.
the unit for a while. So that's one thing to remember for everybody listening, is this is why we do this, is so that you can understand from other people different things. But now that you've gone through it all, you've come out of it. um Before we jump into any other kind of things that you can think of now that would have worked better, what would you identify a burnout to yourself as?
You know, I think my burnout, I classified as burnout at different in different ways at different phases of my career. Initially I felt burnt out because I wasn't getting that thrill. And so I had to change it up. Then it became, when I just didn't want to go to work, and everybody has those days where I don't feel like going to work. I'm tired. It's a long weekend, whatever. But the days where I had to just sit there as I'm putting my uniform on and go, nope, gotta go. I gotta go. I gotta pay the mortgage. Gotta have food on the table. And you're forcing yourself to do the job that you used to enjoy. I think that's a pretty good indicator of burnout. And that's the one that I think hit me the hardest. Was I had a job that it's all I ever wanted to do. I would still be doing it if I didn't have the issues from it that I do. But I got to the point where I was having to force myself to go to work. And then I'd get to work and I'd have to force myself to boot my computer up. And then I'd have to force myself to go into the programs that I need to go into to catch the bad guys, as opposed to hopping on Facebook and playing some Candy Crush and doing all of those things that would help me to avoid doing the work. And when I started realizing how much I had to force myself to do the job, is when I think I finally it clicked that, yeah, I'm burned out of this. I got to find something else to do. And I went on for a little while talking to my wife and looking at things. And I thought, I could transfer over to homicide. That it doesn't sound great, but I could do it. I could find a different area of investigations, but none of it sounded thrilling. And after you've put away a chomo for 3 life plus 284, what else could compare to that? After you've rescued a kid, what else compares to that? And I knew, going back to patrol and dealing with people who were, 5 over in a school zone, or complaining because their neighbor's tree has grown over their fence, I couldn't do it anymore. And that's when my wife and I said, you know what? I'm eligible for retirement. It's time to just get out, get away, and get done with all of it, because I was too burnt out with all of it to be able to do any of it.
So I love that. I love that you brought that up, because that's exactly how, and I can only relate to myself, but I've talked to a lot of people. We're on our 100, and this will be our 130th episode or something. And I've talked to a lot of people about burnout, and very few people recognize that it's the job. Very few people recognize, hey, this job is not what I thought it was. It's not what I once was. I know for myself, I never related it to the job. I ended up going, my life at home is horrible. And so I ended up going to my wife and wanting a divorce because I almost cheated on her. Coming to find out with counseling help, it's the work that was then burning me out, which then I was deflecting onto the thing because I didn't want work to be the thing. Right. Did you actually identify that, or was it something else that then helped you identify work? Was you were burned out at work?
My wife and I had issues as a result of the depression and the I didn't get diagnosed with PTSD until almost 2019, but I was diagnosed with depression in like 2015, and that was because I was an asshole. I mean, just
I can relate. I can relate, brother. I can relate, brother. Yep. I would have been diagnosed with depression as well, man.
And it's probably only because the doctor couldn't diagnose me as an asshole. There's no pill for it. But he said, you're taking your depression out on your family. And that's why I was being an asshole, because I was depressed, which who looks at child porn all day and doesn't get depressed unless you're into it, in which case we're going to have another conversation and I got some bracelets for you. But how could you not get depressed? And my wife called me one day after I had been an especially big asshole and said, fix this or I'm taking the kids and I'm leaving. And my grandparents celebrated their 49th wedding anniversary the day before my wife and I got married. They were at our groom's dinner, and my grandfather said, I challenge you to wear your ring longer than I've worn mine. And he wore his to the day he died.
Being A-type personality, you took that to heart.
Oh, that's a challenge, and I'm even kind of calculating. I'm like, okay, so let's see. They were married in 51. He died in 17. That gives me 68 years. I got to beat 68 years. Okay, I can do this. I got a goal, got the timer set. Once I hit 68 years, we'll see what happens. But my wife telling me, I'm taking the kids and I'm leaving. Not only did I not want that to happen, but it was that oh shit moment of I'm going to fail. My grandpa's going to be, you know,
Rolling over in his
embarrassed
grave.
of me. Yeah. And so I went to the doctor and I said, look, I'm an asshole. I need something for this. And we kind of talked about it and I explained what I did and things like that. And that's when he said, yeah, it's depression. Take these pills and you'll feel better. And I started taking the pills and I started feeling better. But I also started looking at EMDR. I started looking at other types of
Started working
um,
on yourself.
yeah, and really focusing on okay, I like my job, I like what I do, I like my family more most of the time, and so I really need to focus on getting myself better for them. And it's taken a lot. It's taken, I mean, I'm you ask my wife, I'm still an asshole, but I'm less of an asshole
Yeah.
now, and I've worked on not being that asshole and finding ways to you know, take my frustrations at other things out on other things or in other ways instead of on my family. And it's still a work in progress. It's still something that I'm dealing with every day. But it was absolutely essential to do if I wanted to, if I want to beat my grandpa's, you know, record. So
It's you know, and I'm glad that you said that because I know there's so many people out there that that have that same thing like you and I have, where it's like mine, like I have always respected women. It's why I had a female partner of mine, and we went to a job domestic. The guy who assaulted, like punched her, ran out the door. I caught him, and it just completely threw me because in my mind it was I didn't protect her. And so
right.
when I almost cheated on my wife and then went home, told my wife I want a divorce, I'm done. This is what happened. She's stubborn as well, just like I am, which works great sometimes, not so great other times. But she goes, just go to counseling with me one more time. And again, because of that whole thing of I respect women and I don't give up on things easily, more I don't give up on other people with things than myself, how it used to be. I went to counseling. That's when same thing, same as yourself. It was like, oh my God, okay, I am the asshole. This is like the counselor literally had both of us say our stories. And she goes, yes, you guys have stuff going on. But she's like, Chris, you are burned out. You'll have this symptom, this. She rattled off like 10 different things, like memory loss and lack of sleep and no energy. And I was like, wow, yeah, wow, that's me. Like, okay,
Yeah.
you know me. You get me. Even though you're not a cop, you have nothing to do it, you get me. And she's like, Chris, you need a break from work. And that's when that little demon in my head went, screw you. You just want one less cop on the street.
But I'm a
But
cop.
yeah, I'm a cop.
This is
This is
who
what
I
I did.
am.
But at the
Yeah.
same time, it was like it was that whole thing of, no, I don't give up. And my relationship matters to me more than anything. And I love this woman. I told her I would fight for her from the very beginning when we first got together. Okay, you're telling me this is actually me going on and told me all these symptoms and I actually have them. Okay, cool. I'm going to start working on me. I don't know if we're going to work out, but I know that I'm working on me because this is not working. And I remember, tell me if you used to say this or not. I used to say I have an anger issue and it's okay. I just have an anger issue, and that's just what it is. I have an anger problem, and I'm dealing with it by throwing iron around in the gym, and I would
Yeah.
sometimes throw shit and put holes in the wall. I've got an anger issue, and that's why I did that. And now I
And
realize, no, I was just a dick and not dealing with my own shit.
and it's not my fault I have an anger issue.
No,
If
it's
you had
everyone
done what
else.
I told you to do when I told you to do it, you know, and that was the thing. I took a lot of it out on my son because I projected on him what I thought he should be or what I expected him to be unreasonably instead of who and what he was. And so if I said, go do this, and he didn't do it the way I wanted, when I wanted, how I wanted, well, it's your fault. You screwed up. You didn't do it the right way.
Oh,
And I was
ownership.
the asshole. And it wasn't him. And it's taken me a long time to recognize this. It wasn't him. He was his age. He was doing what he was supposed to do and the way he was supposed to do it based upon his age.
And what he
I
knew.
expected him to act like one of my partners at work instead of like the 10, 12-year-old boy that he was. And I was the asshole about it. And you know, I own that now, but it took me forever
Mm.
to own it. And my wife still points it out to me every so often when I'm an asshole that, hey, you're
My wife did
taking
it. My wife did it the other day. She's like, "You're being a dick," and I was like, and this is the realization when you start to do this. And I want to say this for viewers and listeners that maybe aren't where we're at now, and they're like, "Oh yeah, some of this I can actually see that and I can resonate with it." But at the same time, that little voice in their head's going, "No, no, no, these fuckers are just they're on crack or something."
right.
But
They're
but
crazy. I'm not.
they're crazy. I'm not. But I wanted to, my wife said this to me just the other day. She's like, you're being a dick," or she said something. It wasn't "you're being a dick." It was like she said, "Oh, you did this," and I was like, at first I was like, "Ugh," and I was like, "Wait a second." And you now I don't know about you. Tell me, Randall, if you do this as well. You take a second now instead of just straight reacting, or most of the time. Sometimes we just straight react because that old little
Right.
self still comes up. But you take a second, you go, yeah, actually, yeah. Okay, yep. I'll own that one. Or
I
you turn around and you go, no, that's not on me. That actually is like, no, no, that's not me projecting that shit. That is actually you did that. That's what I saw, and that's how I felt.
right. And I don't do it as often as I should. I'll own that. But yeah, you start kind of taking that extra step. And one of the things that I've learned, and I don't know if you've ever read it. It's a book called "The Body Keeps the Score,"
No, I haven't read that.
and it it's a great book because it talks about how trauma literally rewires your brain and it changes the chemical levels in your body and everything else, and how trauma and PTSD and the things that form you in those ways rewires the brain. And you have to it takes a lot to rewire it, and some of that instantaneous reaction is wrong, but your brain is wired to instantly react like that. And so you do. And until you can get that lizard brain, until you can get that rewiring
Yep.
to go back to what it should be instead of how you've been doing it because of your trauma, um, you're going to keep reacting that way. And my wife and I had this conversation just the other day that I'm doing some uh, neurofeedback counseling, and with the lights and the noises and it's kind of trippy. It feels more like a music video for Jimi Hendrix or something, but it is supposed to help rebuild those pathways so that I'm reacting the way I'm supposed to instead of the way that I have been for so long because I was miswired. And we're starting to see some effects of that. We're starting to see me be able to not have that immediate reaction, negative reaction. But I am able to now go, you're right. That's my
Yeah.
bad. I'm wrong.
Yeah. And it's so true. I do neurolinguistic programming type stuff. So a lot of very similar, a lot of stuff they're all very similar. They just do it in different ways. And the one that I do is it's all around that physiology, that language, and also around focus. And so bring the three together. It's like Harvard did a study on people just standing in the superhero stance, raises testosterone and lowers cortisol, like
Hmm.
25% increase in testosterone just by standing there for 2 minutes in that physical state. Now you add in your different language, like that empowering language, the things that you can accomplish, and also shift your focus to that in different ways. It changes everything instantly. And so when you start to have those things, you can just think about those things and just think about them differently. Like that whole, we were talking before we started recording around the whole sitting with your back to the door. And so it's actually shifting and changing that physiology in yourself. Sit tall in a power stance. Focus on why you're there. Really focus on, okay, cool. What am I going to do? Think about it. Change the language instead of, oh fuck, it's a threat. It's horrible. This is going to be bad. To, okay, cool. I have training. I am empowered. I am strong. I know what to do more than 99% of these people that are in here. Cool. I am going to be safe. Run through the
Right.
scenario. Cool. Done. And it can change the way that you react to things because you catch yourself, and as soon as you catch yourself, you change that physiology. And if you change the physiology, so when you catch yourself, if you actually, instead of staying slumped over or something, like you might be subconsciously because you feel ashamed in a way, is you're like, okay, cool, this is what I'm going to do, this is what happened, okay, yep, that was my bad, I apologize, this is what happened, this is what went through my head, and I'm sorry. by changing that language into empowering language and also putting a physical state to it behind it, instantly starts to change that chemistry in the head, just like what you're doing with the lights and that as well. They're doing the same thing. They're just using the lights and that as the physiology, the physical things going on. Right. The language that you're changing in your head, because I'm sure they're having you say things in that, and you're focusing on the outcome in a different way.
And it's hard to do. You know, it
takes practice.
To be very cognizant of yourself at all times, and we're so used to being cognizant of the whole world and not focusing inward that it takes a big switch to start focusing on us. And you know, one of the things that's kind of resonated with me in the last couple of years through the different therapies and things like that, and I've heard it from a couple of different places, is it's like the oxygen mask on an airplane. Yep. You have to put it on yourself before you can help somebody else. And we spend so much of our lives in law enforcement saving other people, helping other people's families, doing everything for everybody else, that we don't take the time to think about us and to do the things that we need to do, and really having to switch that mindset back to, I can't help my kids if I'm an asshole, if I'm a mess, if I'm freaking out, and if I'm going to the movie theater with them and I'm sitting there the whole time paranoid that somebody's going to come in and start blasting. No wonder I never want to go to a movie theater. No wonder I never want to go to public places with my family, you know, stuff like that. And I've had to really focus on adjusting to, like you said, okay, I know where the exits are. I know what's, you know, kind of toward my back. Now let's watch the movie and let's shut all the rest of this noise off for a little while and just, you know, enjoy what's on the screen.
At the end of the day, if it's your day, if it's your and your family's day, guess what? It's your and your family's day. There's nothing you're going to do about it. It's already planned.
Right. Well, and you know, and I've always said it's not the bullet with my name on it that I'm most concerned about. It's the one marked to whom it may concern. It's the stupid stuff that you can't do anything about. It's the traffic accidents, whatever, that's the most annoying, and frankly, the most likely to happen. And so to worry about that and put that much energy into worrying about something that you can't fix anyway, and the worrying isn't going to change it. That's what we got to do is stop worrying about the things that we can't fix and fix the things that we can. And that's what I've been trying to do for the last couple of years now to make sure that I can beat that 68 years. And, you know, I want to grow old with my wife. I want to be with her forever. And that's not going to happen if I keep being an asshole. So I've got to work on that. I've got to fix that.
What would you say to those cops out there that are in still, that can resonate with what we're saying? What would you say, like, one piece of advice to them would be to kind of shift so they can keep doing the career that they love and not have to leave it to then figure out what we figured out?
Turn off your pride and go get help by whatever way you need to. If it's going and talking to a counselor, if it's going to EMDR, if it's just sitting down and having those conversations with your spouse and unloading some of that. And that was the hardest part for me, was I couldn't come and unload to my wife because I was trying to protect her from that evil. I was trying to protect her from the dirtiness of the world that I saw. And so I bottled it all in when I should have been finding somebody to go talk to and unload it. And that way it wouldn't have continued to poison. But, you know, we talked about this before we started recording too. And I have a bit about this in my book. I spent so many years going into the office and putting on a face to everybody so that they thought I was okay, when I knew inside myself I was messed up. But at the same time, they put on that same brave face, and I felt like, am I messed up? Is there something wrong with me that they can do this, or are they faking it too? And I was too proud to reach out to any of them and go, hey, did you have a problem with that image? Are we really messing ourselves up doing this? And it wasn't until I got to that lowest point and realized that my pride needed to go away for the sake of my family that I accepted the fact that I needed to ask for help and I needed to get the help. And the earlier you can do that, the better you can be in for your family and in your job and for yourself and everything else. we can't go out and protect people. We can't go out and do the job if we're messed up ourselves. And so you got to put the pride away and go get the help so that you can be there for the people that matter, whether it's your family or the people on the road or whoever, or just your partner in your car.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that one. And it's that putting that oxygen mask on yourself first, looking after you, then looking after your family, then looking after work, because that's the only way that you can do it. Now I know you've wrote a book. How do people around your experiences of that? Tell us real quickly, what is the book about, and then also how people get in touch with you if they want to get a copy of it.
So the book's called Cyber Creeps, and I've been playing with the title for a while. A buddy of mine said that I should just name it my 6-year journey as a 14-year-old girl and have a picture of myself in my tack gear and just leave it at that and see if anybody bought it. That sick sense of humor, I kind of liked that idea, but my wife shut it down. At the moment, it should be out in publication in the next 10 days is kind of the number that I've gotten. It will be on Amazon, but what I would say is, if anybody wants to go to my website, it's snyder1193.weebly.com. That's WEEBLY.com. There's a link to where the book is going to be, but I've also, part of my book is about the prevalence of internet crimes and how many are out there, and the statistics on it, and ways people can protect themselves and their families and their loved ones from some of these internet predators. And so part of my website is a lot of resources for people about internet crimes and how to educate yourself, how to educate your kids, how you can talk to your kids about what's going on online and protect them from the predators that are out there trying to get them, because the prevalence rates, especially since COVID, have gone through the roof. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is the clearinghouse in the U.S. for all internet crime related matters from the tech companies and stuff like that. Any tech company that's based in the U.S. is mandated by federal law to report to the National Center anytime that they come across something that appears to be sexually abusive or sexually exploitive of children. Before COVID, the average on a weekly basis was about 200,000 to 300,000 cases a week. Last week, it was a little over 1 million. The average since COVID hit and the lockdowns and everything else has kind of wavered between about the 400,000 and the 800,000 range on a weekly basis.
Wow.
And so, more and more kids are online, more and more predators are online, and they're finding new and inventive ways to reach out to these kids and exploit them and extort them. And so I really want to get the word out for people to pay attention. How many people hand a loaded gun to a kid with no training and say, here, make good choices? Nobody would do that with a gun, right? I would never take. All of my kids have been trained on how to handle a gun safely, how to be careful with it, what the rules of safety are with handling a firearm, always assuming it's loaded. I would never just hand a loaded gun to my kid and say, here, make good choices. And yet we're going to give them an iPhone that gets on the internet and goes to every website and app out there. And what's the security on these apps that are 18 plus? Are you 18?
Yeah.
Yes or no? Click. Duh.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you a robot? No, not a robot. And then it goes out. So we have all of these kids who are on all of these sites where all of these predators are going to be or could be. And how many parents check their kids' devices? How many look and see what they're texting and who they're texting? Are you looking at their friends list? Because so many of these kids, they assume that because that friend is somebody that says they know them or is a friend of a friend, that they've got to be okay. And yet you never know when that friend that says they're 14 is the 40-year-old creeper across town looking to exploit him.
Yeah.
If I could pretend to be a 14-year-old kid for 6 years and get away with it, anybody can.
Yeah.
And just because I was doing it for good instead of for evil intents doesn't mean that there's not plenty of people out there that can do it.
Yeah.
And my book is all about the different cases that I worked, that people were out there exploiting children. They were abusing children. Now, some of them were kind of humorous. They were interesting. I had a guy with a diaper fetish, and I won't say anything more because it's a spoiler alert. But if you want to know about a guy with a diaper fetish, and
Go
you,
read the book.
hey, knock yourself out. But I talk about the weird people, the weird cases, but I also talk about how to keep kids safe. And then I have some information at the end about kind of what we've talked about, what this did to me, what this did to my life, what I've done to dig myself out of it, and the number of resources that are out there. It used to be called Blue Help, now it's called First Help. Is one of them. There's a number of organizations out there for law enforcement officers who are dealing with traumas, especially if they've been doing internet crimes or child crimes of any type. Go get the help you need so that you can be able to take care of yourself. Too many guys die within 3-5 years of retirement or while they're still on the job because of stress, because they can't handle it anymore, because it either eats away at them until they, take their own life, or it eats away at them until their heart stops.
Yeah.
And
it's sad. It's a sad one. It needs a change, and that's why we're doing what we're doing, telling our stories, telling what's going on, so that people can relate to them. I love that you've taken your experience and taken what you have and really turned it so that people can use that knowledge, just like we're doing here. Learn from the things that you've done, so that then that can prevent it. As we just wrap up, the last question that I have for you is, what would you say your top tip to self-happiness is?
Self-awareness. I think that you can't be happy unless you know what's going on inside yourself. And for so many years, I pretended to be happy, and I tried to project happiness to my friends and my family and everybody else. And I was miserable inside because I was not aware of how badly I was feeling about things, and I was not doing what I needed to take care of myself so that I could be happy. And once I realized how unhappy I truly was and what those causes were, I could start changing those things and be happier and be a better person. And I've gotten better. I'm not going to say I'm 100%, but I know that if you look at me now compared to a year ago, 2 years ago, I can honestly say I'm a much happier person. My family is happier with me because I finally had that self-awareness, that self-realization of what I needed to do to fix myself so that I could learn how to be happy again. And, until you can really turn that mirror and focus it on yourself and reflect on who you are and what's going on inside you, and take the active steps to fix it, no motorcycle, no bottle, no girlfriend, no whatever is going to truly make you happy. You may get that little momentary whatever as you're, going 100 down the highway with your hair on fire, but you're not going to be truly happy until you can focus on yourself and be able to make those changes to better yourself for yourself.
I love that. That self-awareness is obvious, is definitely that thing that makes life serve you instead of you serving it consistently. Well, Randall, thank you very much for today. I appreciate all the honesty, all the truth, all the little learnings, and as I call them, little nuggets, to help not just for me to hear, but also for our listeners and viewers to really hear from somebody who was in one of those units that can be very destructive to the person because of what you're seeing every single day, as you said already. Before we wrap up and we close out, any last words that you'd like to say, Randall?
The only thing I'd say is, Chris, I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate what you're doing. You're helping a lot of people out there, and there's a lot of cops out there, and all first responders, really, the dispatchers, the firefighters, the EMTs. We give firefighters a hard time for getting to nap during their shift every day, but they see some pretty awful stuff too. And I'm glad you're out there trying to help them and give them the resources. And if anybody takes anything from what I've said and can help themselves be better, do it. Please do it. Reach out to me, reach out to Chris. I'm always happy to offer my 2 cents worth. Feel free to give the change back, because we all need help. And whether we want to recognize it or not, we like to be the helpers and sometimes we got to be the one asking for it. So God bless everybody out there that does this, and good luck.
Thank you, Randall. Well, this is Fight the Burnout, and as I said in the very beginning, it's sponsored by Create From Why, and it's sponsored by our motorcycle retreat that we're running. As Randall said, that awareness, knowing that self-awareness, as he wrapped up, and that is what the motorcycle trip's all about. It's about helping you and me teaching you the tools that I've learned over the last 5+ years, coaching people and going through my journey so that you can have that self-awareness. And we're going to do it off the back of motorcycles, going through the Southwest, staying in accommodation, all fully VIP, so you can just focus on yourself and the ride. And I look forward to hearing from you. Just send me an email at chris@knockingdemoncoaching.com. And we can organize that, or you can go to createfromwhy.com/LIIT USA, and you can book a time in to talk to me directly. But as I always say, take one nugget away from this and just start taking it and putting it into action, because you put one new thing into action every single day and you'll be like 23 times further ahead by the end of the year. So make sure you do that. And that is us today. Share this around, and we will talk to you on the next one. Hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much.